Hey guys, Lee from straightwoo.com here. Wanted to do some quick thoughts on the lunar eclipse in Leo. I know that I'm very late. Most of you know that I've moved house and moved country in the last couple of weeks, and as such, I am living as off-grid as I will ever wish to live in my life, which is to say, I have no Wi-Fi, and there's absolutely no even data connection in this flat because it's a garden flat, semi-subterranean. So, even though I've been off-grid, that has not kept me from having a connection with the stars. Luckily, they are always around, even when data and Wi-Fi is not. So I've been really thinking a lot about this lunar eclipse in Leo, and sorry if I'm looking down throughout. I've got my chart here in front of me in my notes. But first a word, which is to say there's been a lot of hype about this lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipses themselves are a full moon, which occurs near enough to the moon's nodes to create an eclipse event. The closer the nodes go to the moon, the more total or the greater magnitude of the eclipse. So that's what will make a partial eclipse or a total eclipse. In addition, there's a lot of hype material online. Supermoon, blood moon, blue moon, blah, blah, blah moon. These things are not really things. They are hype, hashtag, tack it on, make it clickable type stuff. There's no depth there. I've done a separate video, however, to clarify what exactly each of those things are, what they mean, and how I don't really think they are things. When I look at a chart, I'm interested in, or when I look at new and full moons, I'm interested in the chart, I'm interested in the cycle we're in, I'm interested in the patterns, and that's how I approach it. So just to put it out there that if you were really worried about this full moon lunar eclipse, which is what I got the feeling from, because I had quite a few people contacting me, and I'm sorry if I didn't email you back or get back to you. I have no Wi-Fi. I have no way to get back to you right now. But quite a few people contacted me to say, I'm nervous about this lunar eclipse. I've got this going on. I've got that going on. What does it mean? And I think that's in large part due to the fact that, again, there's all these articles online that they're trying to provoke that sense within us, right? They're trying to get at that part of us that's a bit nervous and a bit unsure about things and manipulate for their greater purpose, which is your clicks and their ad money. So let's push that to the side. This full moon, total lunar eclipse is what creates the blood moon appearance because the moon moves deep into the richest part of the Earth's umbra shadow. It's in Leo. We have been having eclipses in Aquarius and Leo since, on one hand, you could say August 2016, but definitely and definitively from February 2017. And we are not done with the eclipses in Aquarius and Leo until January 2019. So we are about halfway. I cannot say halfway there without then saying living on a prayer. I'm a child of the 80s, so we're halfway there. Bon Jovi. And on a mundane level, I'll link it below. There's a few things I'm going to link below in this video. We can talk about Aquarius and Leo all day long. We can talk about what those signs mean archetypally. We can talk about Aquarius being the collective, Leo being the individual. We can talk about Aquarius being humanitarian, Leo being personal. We can talk about Aquarius wanting to break something down and create a vision for the future. We can talk about how Leo instead just wants to manifest something from the heart and express that and put that out into the world. That's a mundane way to view what's happening. And I say mundane not to denigrate other people that would have been looking at these eclipses and the series of eclipses this way, but I think I've addressed that idea and the connection between these two signs really well in a post that I wrote quite some time ago about the North Node in Leo. So I will link that below for you guys so you can look at that if you want to just think overall what these series of eclipses are meaning for you. And it gives you some insights by rising sign, which some people might find helpful. But what's really super interested in why I'm excited about this particular lunar eclipse and the series of eclipses involved in this, which I'm going to link, and eventually there will be a link between 3 different eclipse events. One is the August 21st, 2017 solar eclipse. Sometimes some people are quite familiar with that as being called the Great American Eclipse because it was visible all across Northern America. Then we have this eclipse, total lunar eclipse in Leo. And in August of this year, August 2018, on the 11th of August, we're going to have another solar eclipse in Leo. And they all have something really, really powerful built into them. So this is a cycle about attachment. Attachments, and what's the difference between being connected with something in relationship to it or being attached, and therefore coming perhaps from a place of fear, a fear of loss, not necessarily being empowered by the attachment. There could be something vampiric about it, yes, of course, but you know, just as humans, one of our hardest things to handle is change. And attachments relate 100% to change and the concept of change. And what do I mean by attachments? So some of us might immediately go to a place, you know, this is what I think, this is what I know I'm attached to. And a lot of us attach to people, relationships, parents, jobs, places and homes, material objects, of course, money. We can be attached to many, many, many things. It's no coincidence, I think, that a lot of spiritual traditions teach non-attachment or detachment as some kind of goal or some kind of path that we're going to follow. And I can't, is it attachment is the root of all suffering, I think is another great phrase. I think that's from Buddhism. But I want to open attachment up as an idea just a little bit wider. So yes, there's the obvious stuff. And then there's the attachment to self and persona and identity and all of the things that I've crafted about myself, that I've decided I'm like this, but I'm not like that. And this person does this for me, but I don't do that for me. There's also roles here. Quite a lot of what we call projections or attachments of some kind. I have decided that I am so not this thing that you must be it. Or, in a very different way, when we go to interact with certain people in certain relationships, we have a very attached sense of, this is who I am in the dynamic, this is who you are in the dynamic. Therefore, I play my role and so do you, and this is how things occur. That's another way of being attached. And the reason why I'm talking about attachment, what we're attached to, is all three of these eclipses. So August 21st last year, January 31st now, and then August 11th this year. I'm still in 2017 mind. August 11th of this year. All three of these eclipses hugely, strongly have a presence of Asteroid Ceres. Another thing I'm going to link below here is the reading that I did for the August 21st solar eclipse, because that absolutely relates to this eclipse, 100%. So I'd encourage you to go back and read that and see what you felt like was happening for you at that time, how that reading might may or may not resonate for you, and then see where we're at with this eclipse here. But to put it in short form, Ceres' myth is one of the most famous myths in all of history. It's not a very original myth, because no myths are. They're always repeating something of a archetypal, deeply human theme, something that's instantly relatable for all of us. And Ceres' theme is about loss. It's about attachment. It's about change and not wanting things to change. So to put it in kind of Cliff Note version, what happens is Ceres and her daughter Cor means maiden, are deeply, deeply, deeply intertwined. Attachment par excellence, one might say. They were connected at the hip. So much so that suitors would come for Cor and be interested in her, and she would rebuff all of them because she wanted to stay with her mother. And one day, Ceres was off doing something else, and Cor was out in the fields with two of her friends, and she was kidnapped. She was kidnapped and drawn into the underworld by Pluto, or Hades, god of the underworld. And Ceres is bereft. She's the great mother of mythology, the great mother of the zodiac, even in the way I work. She has connections to nurturance, food, issues with food, our mothers, our experience of being mothered, conception, many fundamental root chakra type stuff. So Ceres is absolutely bereft. There could be many ways to look at this, right? Because Ceres is a mother. Does she fear detachment from her role as a mother? Ceres has a deeply entangled relationship with her daughter. Does she fear detachment from her daughter? Does she fear having to attach herself to a new identity? All these things could be questions, right? And so she goes around and she can't find her daughter anywhere. And she does a number of things to try to get her back, to try to find her. And one of which is that she creates a great famine on Earth. At which point she finally gets the attention of Zeus, who is deeply worried that all of human and mankind is going to die from this famine that Ceres has put upon the Earth. And so finally he relents and says, he's going to aid her in helping to get her daughter back. So with the help of some other folks on Mount Olympus, Ceres heads to the underworld to try to get her daughter Kore back. But Kore has now become Persephone. So same girl, the daughter, different name. Kore is the maiden, she's nubile, she's young, she's adolescent. Persephone, she's the queen of the underworld. She's Pluto's right hand. Even her name is lunar because Persephone comes from Perseus, an ancient lunar goddess. And all is not well, because even though she gets her daughter back, it turns out her daughter did some things that she didn't know about while she was underground in the underworld. And it means that she can't come back for good. She can only come back for part of the year, and then part of the year she has to stay in the underworld. And this was a lot of myth involved vegetation and agriculture. So this is a myth about the great mother goddess and the vegetation cycle. So there is a part of the year where things die off, which we know is winter. The world turns in on itself and things kind of go quite barren and infertile for a time. And that's comparable to the period where Ceres put a famine onto Earth. And then Persephone comes back in the springtime to spend time above ground with her mother. And that's what we know is from the spring equinox forward until the next winter time. And I think I wrote in the August 21st post, the total solar eclipse, the great American eclipse in Leo, 2017, that there's multiple ways to look at that myth. You can decide that Pluto is the absolute evildoer, and that he assaults Persephone or Kore at that time. He assaults Kore, he takes away her childhood, he defiles her physically. Or if we think from a different point of view, we can decide that Pluto is a kind of change catalyst, change agent, that comes in to help Kore shift and grow in a way that she couldn't if she stayed so attached to her mother. And my sense was this, when I was looking at these two charts and comparing them, the solar eclipse of August had the sun and the moon really closely together, of course, in Leo, because that's what a new moon is. So here they are nestled together, and they had this beautiful trine aspect to Uranus. So that to me looked like change, that looks like a break, that looks like, but a positive one. I mean, change is never easy, so I'm not saying there isn't turbulence, because one of the key words I would always use for Uranus is turbulence. But it looks like a breakthrough, looks like a change. So I'd be interested for you guys to think about what has shifted perceptibly since August, end of August till now. Look at the parts of your chart it would interact with. That would be Leo, most predominantly. You would have felt this eclipse and the previous one most positively if you were a fire sign, Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius, because you would have gotten some really nice things coming off of that eclipse. So it looks like change. And now I look at this lunar eclipse in this chart, and I feel like it's the shift from making the change to now integrating it. So it seems like some big shift has been made, or some choice has been made. And now I feel like it's the part of integrating the change. And it's almost, it's really interesting, again, that all these three eclipses, again, August 2017, now August 2018, all so hugely and strongly feature Asteroid Ceres. Because it's even like anyway, lunar goddesses come in a set of 3, a triptych, the triple moon goddess. And I feel like it's also following the story arc, which is like, here we are at the August 2017 eclipse, and there's a loss or a change or a shift. Because things that challenge our attachments, it's change. Because we're very attached to something, change comes in the front door somehow, some way, and then we have to negotiate with the fact that that thing that we were so embedded in is not available to us in the same way anymore. And here we are at the point where it's like, okay, now the changes happen, but we have to stabilize it. We have to understand what it is. We have to decide how we're going to react to it. How are we going to be in relationship with this idea of change? Where are we at in our attachments and our sense of attachments? If we are having to make big changes in our relationships, our identities, our sense of person, where are we at with those things? And what's important to us? What are we deciding to nurture or not? And then I think the real culmination comes at next eclipse, August 2018. And that's just 2 words here too. If you see this written here, this is, I think, so philosophically bankrupt. And also, if you're worried about, if you're thinking about, God, well, I'm still muddling through my attachments. This is not very clear to me right now. I don't have all the answers I need, etc. Don't worry. I think all lunations, whether we're talking about new and full moons or eclipse events, are a series of unfoldings. Things unfold. And number 2, you will see sometimes written quite often that full moons or lunar eclipses, because again, lunar eclipses are just a full moon with the moon's nodes, are the end of a cycle. No, they're never the end of a cycle. The full moon is the halfway point. So if we imagine that this is the new moon, this is the full moon at 15 days, and this is the next new moon at about 29.5, 30 days. Just think about it. That it's a 30-day period, and if you had a test, I always use this metaphor, so excuse me for the guys that have heard it from me before, but if you had a 30-question test and you only did 15 of the answers, at best you would fail, and at worst you would really fail. So the full moon or a lunar eclipse is not the end of a cycle. It is the midway point. There is something about it that can feel like a culmination, only because a typical full moon with its brightness and its light is about illumination. It's about knowing. It's about the full connection between these great planets, luminaries. But it's not the end. So if you feel like you're still muddling through, if you feel like, looking at these charts, things aren't very clear yet, that's where you're supposed to be. So it's fine. But I think we're moving into a different phase of what's come up from August 21st last year. The changes that took place, how we needed to shift with them. And again, this is about attachment. I just invite you to think about, what are you attached to and how and why? And what do those attachments make you feel? Both in your sense of your feeling sense, but also in your body. Are you attached to a job that makes you just cringe before you go into it? Are you sick the night before work every time? Is there a friend or somebody on the horizon that, probably isn't for your highest, best sense of good anymore, and that cord could use a good snipping? I wanted to read a quote that I think is really applicable to this full moon, total lunar eclipse in Leo, and where we're at with this process. The quote's from Pema Chodron. I probably have butchered her name. Chodron is Chodron. Very well-known spiritual teacher, very, I think a very wise, profound woman. And this is what she says. We think that the point is to pass the test or overcome the problem, but the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. And then they come together again and they fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, room for relief, for misery, for joy. So these are the things that I was thinking. You know, I can imagine from some of what I see in this chart, some people could be second doubting, or there could be self-doubt or like second doubts about the change that they made. There could be ideas and concepts around the need to be engaged and be emotionally connected, to be emotionally in relationship to something, but then also the struggle to try to do your own thing and not be overwhelmed by this other connection. I think some people will feel split between the needs of themselves, the needs of others, taking care of ourselves and nurturing ourselves, and taking care of nurturing others. And there is also something interesting in the chart, too, which is that Venus and Juno, goddess of marriage, are really, really close to one another. And they're both squaring Jupiter. And when I see this kind of configuration, sometimes that talks about power struggles, that talks about power dynamics that need to be addressed in relationships. And here I'm thinking mostly about romantic partnerships of any kind, shape, or description. But it could also be business partnerships, and it could also be close female friendships, or anyone that you're that is any kind of femme relationship where there is attachment, where there is a sense of being together. So these are some of the things I was thinking. You know, feel free to give me your thoughts below, but again, we're halfway there, living on a prayer. So you've got still another 6 months ahead of us, or a little bit more. Again, the next eclipse will be August 11th, 2018, or at least the next eclipse in Leo will be August 11th, 2018. So we've got a bit of time to keep unpacking this knowing, keep unpacking what comes up in the lunar eclipse. This is not the end of the cycle. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. But I do, once again, I invite you to think about your attachments. Are they empowering you? Are they suffocating you? What does your body tell you? All of these things. That's it for me. If you have enjoyed this, I'd so appreciate it if you subscribe. That would be very kind of you. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the blog very soon. Hopefully, once I'm off grid, to get back in business as usual. Lots of love to all of you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.